Good morning, folks. It's your old Uncle Jason here again, serving you up some spiritual breakfast from Our Daily Bread. But before we get into it, I want to say I do apologize for the last week and a half. Things have gotten a little bit hectic again, even more so the last several days. So if you bear with me, we'll get on to it. It's going to be a lot of them. So I hope each one of them is as fulfilling for you as they will be for me, because every single one of these has something to do with what you got going on at any given time. I understand that it might be out of order, but each one will be labeled in the order in which I'm going to read them. So you'll have to just look through it. It's all there for you, all on the page, ready to go for you. So let's get into it. Today's Bible reading for Thursday, October 24th, 2024, is taken from Isaiah 58, the verses 3 through 9. Wherefore have we fasted, say they, and thou seest not? Wherefore have we afflicted our soul, and thou takest no knowledge? Behold, in the day of your fast ye find pleasure, and exact all your labors. Behold, ye fast for strife, and debate, and to smite with the fist of wickedness. Ye shall not fast as ye do this day, to make your voice to be heard on high. Is it such a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush, or to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Wilt thou call this a fast, an acceptable day to the Lord? Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house? When thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, and thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh. Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thine health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before thee. The glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. Then shalt thou call, and the Lord shall answer. Thou shalt cry, and he shall say, Here I am. If thou take away from the midst of thee the yoke, and putting forth of the finger, and speaking vanity. That's some heavy word this morning, folks. The article today, entitled Food for the Hungry, is written by Win Collier. For years, the Horn of Africa has suffered from a brutal drought that has devastated crops, killed livestock, and imperiled millions. Among the most vulnerable, like the people of Kenya's Kakuma refugee camp, whom fled from wars and oppression. It's even more dire. A recent report described a young mother bringing her baby to camp officials. The infant suffered from severe malnutrition, leaving, quote, her skin and hair dry and brittle. She wouldn't smile, she wouldn't eat. Her tiny body was shutting down. Specialists immediately intervened. Thankfully, even though the needs are still great, an infrastructure has been built to provide immediate life-or-death necessities. These desperate places are exactly where God's people are called to shine His light and love, Isaiah 58:8. When people are starving, sick, or threatened, God summons His people to be the first to provide food, medicine, and safety, all in Jesus' name. Isaiah rebuked ancient Israel for thinking they were being faithful with their fasting and prayers while ignoring the actual compassionate work of crisis required, sharing, quote, food with the hungry, providing the poor wanderer with shelter and clothing for the naked. God desires for the hungry to be fed, both physically and spiritually, and He works in and through us as He meets the need. Now that's something that we all need to think about, folks. If you go through your fastings and prayer, if you're able to, it's one of those deals where God said, I'll have obedience rather than sacrifice. Bring no more vain repetition. Your incense is an abomination unto me. He was tired of the hollow believers. He was tired of the hollow followers. He wanted somebody to be on fire for him. He wanted somebody to be either ice cold or lukewarm. And ice cold doesn't mean that they're not of the flock. Cold, refreshing water is soothing to a weary traveler, and refreshing. Hot means that it can be relaxing when it comes to water. There was two places. One's water was bitter, the other water was fresh, and he would rather you be hot or cold rather than in that middle of lukewarm. Be either or nothing at all, because if you're lukewarm, he'll spew you out of his mouth. And it's one of those deals, folks, where he would rather us not know him than know him and not walk therein. It means there's a degree of punishment on the other side. Greater the damnation for fill in the blank. More tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than it would be for that city. I could go on for the Bible verses that says about there being degrees of punishment in hell. I assure you, folks, we can escape all this. We can help others escape by telling them about the good news of Christ, doing what the Lord has called us to do. We are kings and queens of God's court. We are heirs and joint heirs with Christ. It's our time we start acting like it. It's not a position of privilege. It is a position of servitude. Let he who is greatest amongst ye, let him be a servant. Remember that, folks. If you don't believe me, just look at all the stories of ancient times, of how the servant kings were ultimately the ones that were loved the most, and the selfish, uncaring ones were the ones that didn't last too long and ultimately were forgotten. Pride goeth before the fall. He that humbles himself will be lifted up, but he that lifts himself up will be abased. Simple truths. That is the word of God. He uses the simple to confound the wise. Be not wise in your own eyes, but rather measure your life by the word of God, and only the word of God. It's time we cut the fat. It's time we start getting into the beef steak of the word. And I'm preaching to myself on this, folks. Be very, very careful of what you feed yourself, because what you feed yourself, you will become. If you feed yourself nonsense, if you're feeding yourself of the pleasures of the world, you will become like the world, and God will have nothing to do with you. A soul that draws back, I will have no pleasure in him. Never draw back. Don't sin willfully. But every day you make progress, you keep fighting, you keep pushing forward, keeping your eyes on Christ, and know that you're under grace. And even if you fall short, keep pushing towards the Lord. Spend time with the Lord. That is your spiritual meal. This is a good time, right? Watching what you're watching right now, spiritual breakfast. This is your time to spend alone with the Lord, to listen to the words he's given to me, and spending time alone with yourself. Never, ever neglect that. Because the longer you spend with the Lord, the more time you spend to him, the more he'll make you whole, the more he'll heal you, the more he will make you into the man or woman that he wants you to be. It's simple truths, folks. Simple truths. And make sure that you take of the daily bread. Don't have to read the daily bread, but this daily bread. But you do have to get in the Word. You do have to listen to what the Lord has to say. You do have to learn and apply it to your life. Feeding yourself one bite at a time. So folks, I'll leave you with this final word. Though you may stare death in the face, I pray all you see is God's grace. And until we meet again, stay safe, stay blessed, and as always, stay in the shadow of the Almighty. This is your old Uncle Jason, signing off.